Welcome back from our brief but hopefully spectacular fall break. So you're watching Learning Unit number 8 video right now. As far as an overview, what we're looking at is we're going to be talking about mental health and specifically mental health disorders. But when we talk about mental health, we are including our emotional, psychological, as well as our social well-being. It affects how we think, feel, and act, and it also, our mental health determines how we make choices, handle stress, and relate to others. So mental disorders, some people would say mental ill health, but we're going to go over some of the different terms used, such as depression, schizophrenia, anxiety disorders, and bipolar affective disorders, along with substance abuse disorders or substance use disorders, SUDs, are the leading causes of disability globally. So we're hearing that, correct? Mental disorders is along with substance use disorders, are the leading causes of disability globally. So while increasing in prominence, historically, mental disorders have not been seen as a priority. That has really been changing, especially in high-income countries such as ours, over the past 10 years. This week, we're going to discuss these mental disorders with co-occurring substance use disorders, especially the continuing impact on mental health years after, now 3 to 4 years after the COVID pandemic. So we're going to be able to understand the global burden of mental disorders, as I stated here, compare depression treatment for people living in high-income countries and those living in low and middle income countries. So being treated for depression, we know we have medications for depression, but does it differ if you live in a high income country versus a lower middle income country? And we're really going to be able to articulate the difference between the terms mental health conditions, mental illness, and mental disorders. So the readings for this week are really pared down because we're looking at chapter 14, which is talking about non-communicable diseases and the burden of non-communicable diseases, but we're looking at the information specifically to mental health and mental health disorders and conditions. So you're going to read pages 419 to 420, which is really essential, as well as continuing on with 436 to 440. So there's not as much reading from our text, but this gives us the global look at mental health conditions. You're going to also review other articles and information found within this learning unit. You're going to take quiz 8 and your discussion board 8 posting, as well as reply. So reply to at least one. So this, if you just Google the terms and ask about, is it acceptable to use these 3 terms, you're going to find that artificial intelligence tells us that yes, mental illness, mental disorders, and mental health conditions are pretty much used interchangeably. But I like the way it clarifies the mental health conditions. It's a broader term that includes mental disorders and other states that can cause significant distress, impair functioning, or increase the risk of self-harm. So if you're looking at like an umbrella term, a global term, we could use mental health conditions. But the other 2 terms that you typically see is mental illness or mental disorders. So when you're talking about depression, you're not saying it's for mental health. It is a disorder. It is an illness. And you could say it is a mental health condition. So all 3 terms are acceptable. But I know sometimes I've seen students just say mental health when they really are talking about a mental disorder or mental illness. We promote mental health, right? We prevent mental disorders. So let's continue on, because that was just a brief. So you're taking quiz 8. This is the info found in your textbook readings, specifically the readings I gave you, the pages. It will not be timed, but you have to complete it once you start it. This is, along with our textbook readings, really the last look at global information about mental disorders. And specifically, we're looking at depression in this. So this is the World Health Organization. We know that depression is a common mental disorder. And globally, here's some more statistics. An estimated 5% of adults suffer from depression. This was information from 2023. We know that depression can lead to suicide, so that's typically, depression is the mental health condition or the mental disorder that causes the most deaths. When you look at page 419 in your text, again, global information worldwide, there was a study done that showed more than 2.2 million deaths. Now going back to 2010, so things have really changed. Both our global population has increased remarkably, but along with this data, we would probably be well over 2.2 million deaths associated with depression alone. So that is significant, and usually it's linked for depression to suicide, and then also some morbid conditions, such as the book says cardiovascular disease. So it's also important to look at page 420 to really look at some of the other mental health conditions, and it defines them briefly. I know many of you have already taken mental health, or you may not have taken your mental health course yet, but we are looking just briefly at the definition of bipolar, depression, panic disorders, and schizophrenia. But autistic spectrum disorder, ADHD, are also considered mental health conditions or mental disorders. But the one thing I really want to make sure that you look at in this document is, let's see if I can find it. I believe I might have already passed it. So let's look here, because it's the authors state that although there are known effective treatments for mental disorders, more than 75% in low and middle income countries, people who reside in low and middle income countries, receive no treatment. And that's for mental disorders. So that would include depression, anxiety, etc. So I just thought that was shocking. What a difference between high-income countries such as our own and low-income countries. So that's one of the reasons that I wanted you to really look at this site. So now we're really going to focus mostly on the U.S. population, and that's where I just brought that up. So we're going to look at those disorders and also co-occurring disorders such as substance use disorder. Now we know that it impacts people globally, but we don't have as much information, as much data. So therefore now we're going to focus on the U.S. instead of looking at the global world. So anxiety disorders. This is NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness. This is a fantastic group site, and I want you to just review some of the information about anxiety disorders. So this is just making sure everybody has this foundation of some of the basic mental disorders. And you can see mental health conditions is the term they use here, but then you can see some of the other disorders that are associated. So that's information from NAMI, and let's keep going. Let's close that out. This is an article on the implications of COVID-19 regarding mental disorders and substance use. And it was updated in 2023 to incorporate the latest available data. So some of the things that you read are just demonstrating that we are in a mental health crisis, and it continues at least 3 to 4 years after our COVID pandemic. So I ask that you read that, and I have highlighted the final paragraph here. Co-occurring disorders, so that's usually for the mental health disorders that frequently co-occur with substance use disorder. So this is really important for nurses to better understand, and we come back to NAMI again for this link. So read the information on this. And this is just a brief paragraph about opioids from the National Institute of Drug Abuse. So this is going to give you some information about overdoses, and even as recent as 2023. So the final two things, let me just drop down to, this is one of my favorite singers in many different ways, John Prine. He died in April 2020 from COVID-19. But this is a song called Sam Stone. It's an old song, and it's speaking to a Vietnam veteran who came home and died from a heroin overdose. So it's a beautiful, melancholy kind of song that, if you'd like, listen to it. So that's the final item listed here, but our discussion board. So what you're doing is you're discussing the key findings from all of your readings, especially the information that you found on NAMI and the textbook and the other links in that article regarding mental health disorders and substance use disorders, along with the continuing impact of the COVID pandemic on the U.S. population's mental health. And don't forget, reply to a classmate's posting. I hope you have a great week, and let me know if I can be of any assistance going forward. Thanks.